I'm Daniel Dekay, and welcome back to Overkill Global, BangerTV's international heavy metal review show. I am so stoked to be back. This time around, I'll be reviewing some metallic hardcore records from South Korea. That's metallic hardcore, not metalcore. It's that real comfy space where the music lives in between New York hardcore and crossover, and it's something that I dig. I'll be giving you some of my personal picks that I think best represent this scene, plus we'll be hearing from my new friend James at Watch Out Records. To all the viewers who gave their input and suggestions for records, thank you. We read every single one of them, and we'll be doing some shoutouts at the end, so stick around. So what do we even know about South Korea and its metallic hardcore scene? Let's start out with Seoul. It's the capital city of South Korea, and it's fucking massive. It's 25 million people, which is half of the entire population of the country. It's also one of the largest metropolitan city areas in the world. It has the world's fastest internet, and the international drink of choice is soju. From K-dramas to K-pop, Korean culture is one of the fastest growing and most popular mainstream cultures in the world. Artists like BTS and Psy are so globally, massively known that even Banger has its own K-pop series.
What is K-pop?
It's bright lights, vibrant colors, crazy concepts.
I had to do a bit of a deep dive into it all. You know what? I'm stoked. I discovered some rad bands and I met some amazing people along the way. I've personally never toured South Korea before, nor had I heard of a single one of these bands in advance, so I couldn't go on this journey alone. I enlisted the help of a local correspondent in South Korea named James from Watch Out Records, and he is here to come along on this journey with us.
My name is James Park, and I work for a small independent label called Watch Out Records based in Seoul, South Korea. You know, I've been landed a pretty interesting job like over the years as an interpreter for bands whenever they had a show in Korea, such as Judas Priest, Motorhead, Behemoth, the Black Dahlia Murder, and a lot of others. South Korea has one of the biggest mainstream music scenes in the world with K-pop. The hardcore metal scene in South Korea, it's like overshadowed massively. And regardless of that, the metal scene in Korea, so it's very small, but it's very intimate. The interesting thing about the metal and hardcore scene in Korea is that back in early 2000s, there were no boundaries between genres, whether it be punk, hardcore, death metal, thrash metal, heavy metal. But as the time goes, newer bands that formed recently developed their own style of music, which made it more common to have more genre-specific shows. What we're talking about here today is about breaking down those walls between metal and hardcore. Two of the albums that I think represents the South Korean metallic hardcore scene very well. The first one is called Venom by 13 Steps. Their last record released in 2015. And as you can tell by the name, they were heavily influenced by Pantera. By that album, I think they really perfected their sound of hardcore with metallic elements and even added a little bit of experimentation. And another one is called Wolf. It's an EP album by Cut Deep. It's one of our earliest releases in 2016, but it did certainly leave an impact for people who are looking for something more powerful, more raw, more mosh-worthy. Yeah, I think those two are the records that I think really represents the metallic hardcore in South Korea.
James, thank you for those hot picks and insights. Now let's move on. And remember, these are not in any order aside from chronological. No favorites, no best to worst. This is simply in the order in which they were released. First up is Burn My Bridges Connection, released back in September 2013 on Town Hall Records. This band rules. They seem to be pretty well known in their own scene, but I had a hard time finding any real concrete bio-type info on them. What I was able to translate from blogs and interviews and YouTube comments, it seems that they formed in 2008, released a couple EPs, had some member changes, and played a ton locally, opening for all the big touring packages when they came through town. Sick of It All, Bane, Terror, you get it. This 2013 EP kicks off with what I like to refer to as genre-defining riffage. It's that mid-tempo, stompy, but not too moshy metallic hardcore thing, and it's a very hot move. Then the vocal kicks in, and instantly you hear it all in context with each other and realize it's that New York hardcore warship that you've been after. Mix in that metallic guitar tone, the chugs, the crossover sensibility, the palm muted stuff, it's all there. It's basically a perfect storm. They've even got that double vocalist thing down. I like the contrast between the two sounds. You've got that screamy, very aggressive, in-your-face main vocalist, and then you've got that second vocalist who I swear sounds like the bass player from Tragedy with those really low and thick, abrasive, gurgly screams. There are some fist-pumping, hardcore vocal chants on this record that literally make me want to reach out from the crowd, grab the mic from the lead singer, and scream the words myself. There's tons of moshy parts. There's even some melodies that are so epic that they make the hair raise on the back of your neck. Unfortunately, there is not a single guitar solo in sight, but you know what? These type of short and powerful songs don't always call for it, so that's okay. This EP is an absolute monster, and I seriously enjoyed it. If I was at any show, any metal or hardcore show, and this band opened, I would be absolutely stoked. And to me, that is the ultimate sign that they belong in this video. It's those mid-tempo mosh tunes for me, and that's why I'm stoked to give this one 4 out of 5 skulls. The second record we're looking at today is No Shelter, Karma Kills, released in May 2018, again on Town Hall Records. No Shelter is from Seoul and describes themselves as modern, heavy hardcore. The sketchy, hand-drawn album cover mixed with that classic type font with the album title, it instantly grabbed me. It instantly reminded me of all my favorite OG hardcore punk records. I was a fan before I even heard the first note on the record. This is the band's only full-length to date, having released one EP prior in 2016, and I can safely say that I believe they are a solid staple in the scene, having gotten the call to open for the likes of Power Trip and Turnstile. This album opens with another one of those classic minute-long hardcore intro riffs. Are we starting to see a theme here? The label, the riffs. After hearing that intro riff, every metalhead is freaking out because what we are dealing with is some beautiful HM two-tone, baby, that buzzsaw for days. I love it. It is absolutely a nod to the classic death metal tone right off the bat. It is clear, even after just that first riff, that we are in for a very hard record. The riffing, the tones, the tempos, the vocals, the drums, the artwork, everything about this record gives me instant No Warning vibes, and that is a good thing in my opinion, because No Warning's Ill Blood, to me, is the perfect metallic hardcore sound. Even the fourth track on this record, which Google translated to the title being Husks, I believe, it's a direct lift of a No Warning riff. These guys are clearly fans. Then, seemingly out of nowhere and without warning, amongst all this metallic riffing goodness and screaming hardcore vocal madness comes the breakdowns. Whoa. Punishingly grindy, slow, chonky, single note strokes, huge mutes, neck snapping intensity. These are my favorite types of breakdowns, where they bring back that real sexy riff from earlier, but way slower, like way slower and way staccato. It is awesome, and it literally makes me want to break every bone in my body. And hey, I'm normally the guy that sides with the no karate in the pit crew, but these kind of breakdowns even make me want to do roundhouse kicks at the air. I highly recommend this record and give it a 4.5 out of 5 skulls. Next up, we've got one of the only bands from the entire scene not hailing from Seoul. This is All I Have's The New Path, released October 2018 on Town Hall Records.
We're cutting through this pain. We're getting through this time. Right here, we're here. Rocking, supreme machine. Right here, we're here. Rocking. Never stop fighting. Never stop living. Never stop creating. Rocking, supreme machine.
All I Have is from South Korea's next biggest city, Busan. They've been cranking out metallic hardcore since 2011. They've got demos, EPs, splits, and a full length. But today we're focusing on 2018's EP, The New Path. It's definitely darker than the 2 records we've looked at already in a very big way, but I still think it fits this genre mold very well. What it does have in common with the 2 prior records is the very obvious New York hardcore influence. But it's taken to these new levels of darkness and, say, depression almost, with these almost progressive and diminished sounding guitar parts. The vocals definitely add to the mood as well. There's no other vocals that sound like this out of the albums we're looking at today. The screams are so loud and piercing that it almost sounds like the mic is peaking the entire time. Serious tough guy hardcore vibes. For a microgenre so based in the old school, I find it interesting that this band has such a modern approach to their breakdowns. They're less grindy and punishing and more bouncy, something I associate way more with a genre like metalcore. But for every modern style breakdown on this record, there is also 3 borderline thrash riffs and a ton of screaming gang chants to keep everything in check. Thus far, this is the most melodic, and I'll say it again, dark-sounding record of the bunch. I like how different it is than the first 2, but how it also still fits in the genre mold so well. It kind of goes to show that maybe this metallic hardcore micro-genre that we're investigating is a little more encompassing than originally thought. Let's keep digging into records from the scene, but first I'm gonna slap a 3.5 skull rating on All I Have's The New Path. Is the next record maybe the closest thing to metallic hardcore we found today? Let's take a look at Turn for Hours, Things We Ever Know, released independently in August 2019. I had a really good time taking a look at this EP. The metal influence is very obvious and felt in everything from the riffing, the instrumentation, the tones, the presentation of it all, but most importantly, hardcore is still the name of the game for this band, and I absolutely love it. This band has a couple releases and is made up of members from other South Korean hardcore and metal bands. It seems that this is truly one of those scene bands, a true local band for the people of the scene by the people of the scene. So much so that even our local specialist, James, sang gang vocals on one of the songs. Lyrically, this band puts a large emphasis on being socially conscious about what they're saying and how they're saying it, trying to create a sense of unity within their scene with their words. They don't try and veil what they're talking about. They do it in a very classic, hardcore kind of gang vocal chorus way. Even on this EP, there's a final track called FTP. Now, I'm sure you can guess what that stands for.
Fuck the police coming straight from the underground.
The vocals are a big standout on this EP. They're really clear, they're sharp, and they manage to kind of direct the groove of the song, if you know what I mean. There's all sorts of cool little vocal tags like and stuff like that. kind of sprinkled around with the gang vocals, and I really dig that kind of stuff. The drums also really stand out to me. They rise above in the mix, really powerful sounding toms, snare, and kick. The use of the china for the accents really creates some cool intensity. On the guitar level, there's some really cool chugs, there's tons of muted notes. Overall, well written, well produced, and hella energetic. This one's getting a 4 out of 5 skulls from me. The final album we're discussing today is the newest of the bunch. Let's jump into Excused Duty's Judgment Salvation Within My Hands, released October 2020 on Wretched Records. As I said, Excuse Duty is the newest band on our list. They didn't even form until 2020. All they've released is an EP and a demo, and today we're taking a look at that EP again, titled Judgment Salvation Within My Hands. This is definitely the heaviest and most beat down of the records we've checked out today. It's got much more of a new school and borderline metalcore vibe than you may have come to expect after hearing the last few records. The band describes themselves as 90s metalcore and modern hardcore, which in the context of everything really makes sense. The guitar riffing here is a lot more notey, precise, and intricate than any of the other crossover style riffing records we've been looking at so far today. There's pinch harmonics, there's 16th note stuff, there's jazzy and diminished chords, and I swear I'm even hearing some 7, if not 8-string guitar action. The riff content here is very, and I emphasize, heavy, but there's also incredible melodies, harmonized licks, and tons of leads, something we haven't seen a lot of today. There's even a massive guitar solo in the song called Sanzu River, and it sounds like it totally shreds, like really shreds, but it's so quiet in the mix, and that really frustrated me every time I listened to it. It's not just the riffing that's at a whole other level on this record. The drums and vocals are absolutely at their most aggressive as well. The singer literally sings on this EP as if it's the last words that will ever come out of his mouth. The drums are over the top. There's blast beats, tons of fast fills, double bass. Sometimes it does feel a little overkill. I'm gonna be honest with you. The intensity is a little over the top sometimes, but hey, it's a new band. I'm stoked to see how they develop. I'm stoked to hear their next release, and I'm thrilled to give this one 3.5 out of 5 skulls. So what did we learn on this leg of the world tour? I think there's an incredibly strong and quality hardcore and metal scene in South Korea. The quality of the bands is excellent. There are great venues. There's wicked labels. There's even some specialty record shops. I totally think this scene needs to get a little more recognition on the global scale and a little more attention as a tour stop. I want to give a massive shout out to James and the whole team over at Watch Out Records. Please do yourself a favor and check out all of the records from all of the bands we discussed today. Plus, I'd like to give a couple shout outs for some bands that didn't fit the genre for today's video, but I discovered in my research, and they rule. Huge shout outs to Slant, Mahatma, and the Geeks. As well, our Patreon community had to have their say, and Falxifer Rex suggested a band called Gwamegi that I actually encountered during my research, and they rule. So check all of these bands out. Tons of talent in South Korea, tons of awesome metal and hardcore. Can't wait to explore with you guys sometime soon. Stamp that passport.